All right, everyone, get ready because today we're diving deep into Buddhist councils. If you love history, or maybe you're a new UPSC aspirant getting ready for that GS1 exam,
Yeah.
this one's for you. We've got this text all about these big events, and honestly, it's way more interesting than it might seem at first.
Yeah, you're totally right. These councils are really important for understanding how Buddhism went from a small group to like a major world religion,
Yeah,
and how it affected Indian society and even beyond.
for sure. So for anyone who needs like a quick recap, what exactly were these Buddhist councils? I mean, were they like ancient TED Talks? Or maybe philosophical rap battles into the Bodhi tree?
Well, not exactly. Think of them more as like formal gatherings of Buddhist monks and nuns. The Sangha, they're called. And they came together to discuss and figure out some pretty important stuff. Imagine trying to keep the teachings of someone like the Buddha alive, making sure they stay accurate and relevant across generations. That's what these councils were all about.
So it wasn't all just meditation and chanting then. Sounds like there were some serious debates going on. Our text mentions 4 major councils that really shook things up.
Yeah, for sure. Each council is like a different chapter in Buddhist history. They show the challenges and changes the community faced over time. And for our UPSC folks out there, knowing these councils is super important for understanding the development of religious and philosophical thought in ancient India. It's a big part of the GS1 syllabus.
Okay, let's hop in our time machine and go back to 483 BC. Right after the Buddha died, the first council starts in Rajagriha. I can only imagine what it was like. A mix of sadness and wanting to keep the teachings alive, and maybe a little bit of, what do we do now?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
This first council was held with the support of King Ajatasattu, and it was all about protecting the Buddha's words before they were lost or changed. It was like creating the first official record of his teachings.
Makes sense. So who are the main people at this first council? Any big names we should know?
Oh, definitely. Mahakasyapa, a senior monk, he led the discussions. But 2 other guys really stand out. Upali, he recited the Vinaya Pitaka, which is all about the monastic rules. And then Ananda, he recited the Sutta Pitaka with the Buddha's core teachings. Can you imagine the pressure on them?
Wow, talk about pressure.
Yeah.
So basically, these 2 monks became the first people to compile the Buddhist scriptures, right? They laid the foundation for what we know as Buddhist doctrine today.
Exactly. What they did during this council is huge. Those texts became the basis for understanding the Buddhist teachings. They made sure the teachings survived for centuries.
Okay, so let's fast forward about 100 years to 383 BC. We're at the Second Buddhist Council in Vaishali. Our source says things got a little heated here. What started the arguments this time?
Well, remember those monastic rules Upali put together in the first council? Turns out not everyone agreed on how strictly they should be followed. This led to the 10 points dispute. Imagine 10 major points that cause a huge debate among the Sangha.
10 points. Yeah. Okay, tell me more. What were these monks arguing about? Was it like, who got the best meditation cushion or something?
No, not quite. Some of the issues seem kind of basic to us now, like whether monks could keep salt in horns or eat after midday. But these points actually showed deeper disagreements about how to adapt the Buddha's teachings to a changing world. But they still wanted to stay true to the original message.
Ah, so it's about staying true to the OG message while also changing with the times. Sounds like something we still struggle with today, right?
Yeah.
But what happened? Did they find a solution?
Well, they tried. The council, which was led by a monk named Sabakami, tried to find a compromise. But the disagreements were too strong. It actually caused the first big split in the Buddhist community.
Oh, no. A Buddhist breakup. So who are the 2 sides in this monastic drama?
On one side, you had the Sthaviravadins, the traditionalists. They believed in sticking closely to the original rules. And on the other side were the Masamgikas. They were more open to flexible interpretations. This split, although dramatic, actually led to more diverse Buddhist thought. It allowed different schools and interpretations to grow.
Wow, so this second council wasn't just about a few rules. It actually set the stage for Buddhism to branch out and go in new directions. That's a big turning point.
Exactly. And for anyone studying for the UPSC, understanding this split and why it happened is crucial for getting the nuances of Buddhist history and its effect on Indian society. It's not just dates and names. It's about understanding how ideas evolved.
Okay, before we go to the next council, let's just pause for a second and let all those details sink in. It's amazing to think how these early gatherings shaped Buddhism, a religion that would eventually impact millions around the world.
Yeah, it really is incredible. These councils weren't just about saving words, they were about saving a way of life, a philosophy and a way to enlightenment that still resonates with people today.
Welcome back, everyone. We're still time traveling, checking out those Buddhist councils. In part one, we talked about the first two councils. We saw them carefully saving the Buddha's teachings, and even that dramatic monastic breakup.
And now get ready, because we're going into a really important chapter in Buddhist history. It's when Buddhism went from like a small Indian religion to one embraced by an emperor, and it spread across huge distances.
You're talking about Emperor Ashoka, right? Our text says he was a big supporter of Buddhism, and his reign is the setting for the Third Buddhist Council in 2047 BC.
Exactly. Ashoka's conversion to Buddhism was a big deal, and his influence is all over this council, which happened in Pataliputra, the center of the Mauryan Empire.
So picture this. Hundreds of monks meet up in Pataliputra, a city bustling with activity, all thanks to Ashoka. What were they trying to do this time? Was it just a big reunion, or was there a deeper reason?
Well, Ashoka wasn't just about throwing big parties for monks. He really wanted to purify the Sangha, to make sure the teachings were being practiced the right way. Think of him like a reformer for Buddhism, you know. He wanted to get rid of any corruption or straying from the real path.
Okay, so Ashoka was like the quality control guy for Buddhism.
Yeah.
But how did they do this purification? Did they have ancient lie detectors for monks?
Haha, no, not quite. This council was led by Moggaliputta, a really smart guy, and they focused on clarifying the teachings. They kicked out monks who weren't following the rules, and they strengthened the teachings. They wanted to make sure Buddhism stayed true to its roots as it grew.
Makes sense. So while they were purifying and clarifying, did anything else big happen during this council? Anything our UPSC folks should write down in their notes?
Definitely. Remember how the first council put together the Vinaya and Sutta Pitakas? Well, at the third council, they added the Abhidhamma Pitaka. It's the last piece of the Tripitaka. Think of it like the deep dive into Buddhist philosophy and psychology.
Wait, so they finished the whole Buddhist library at this council. That's huge. What was in the Abhidhamma Pitaka? Was it like a self-help book for ancient monks or something?
Not exactly self-help, but it did go into complex stuff like consciousness and perception and the nature of reality. It's like the philosophical and analytical heart of Buddhist thought, you know? It explores the deeper parts of the teachings.
Wow, that's some serious brain power. But hang on, our source mentioned something about Pali. What does Pali have to do with the Third Council?
Ah, yes. Another important thing for our UPSC friends. During this council, they standardized the Tripitakas in Pali, the language of everyday people. This helped establish the Theravada school of Buddhism, which became dominant in Sri Lanka and Southeast Asia.
So Pali became the main language for Buddhist scriptures in a big chunk of Asia.
That's really interesting. What about Ashoka? Did he just watch all this happen, or is he more involved? Oh, Ashoka was definitely not passive. Inspired by what the council did, he launched his famous Dhamma missions. He sent out monks to spread the Buddha's message all over. It's like Buddhism went on a world tour thanks to Ashoka.
Hold on, we need to talk about this. This is huge. Buddhism is spreading beyond India's borders. Where did these missions even go? Were they just preaching to nearby kingdoms, or did they go further?
Ashoka was ambitious. These missions went to some incredibly diverse places, from Sri Lanka and Kashmir to places as far as Greece and Egypt. Imagine Buddhist monks talking with Greek philosophers, or sharing ideas along the Silk Road.
Wow, that's amazing. So because of Ashoka and the council's work, Buddhism wasn't just an Indian religion anymore. It was taking root in other cultures. It was planting seeds that would grow into vibrant Buddhist communities all across Asia.
Exactly. And for anyone studying for the UPSC, understanding how far these missions reached is super important. It shows the global impact of Buddhism during Ashoka's reign and how it mixed with other cultures and philosophies.
Okay, let's pause for a second, let our listener take all this in. From cleaning up the Sangha to finishing the Tripitaka and setting Buddhism on a global mission. This third council was a whirlwind of activity.
It really was. It shows how Ashoka's support, along with the dedication of the Sangha, helped shape Buddhism into a major world religion, a legacy that continues today.
Okay, we've covered a lot, and I bet our listener's mind is buzzing with all these details. But get ready, because we're not done. The Fourth Buddhist Council is coming up next, and it takes us to a whole new empire and a major turning point in Buddhist thought.
That's right. Get ready for the Kushan Empire, a new patron, and a debate that will shake the foundations of Buddhism. Stay with us.
And we're back, folks, ready for the grand finale of our Buddhist Council's deep dive. We've seen how these gatherings shape Buddhism in some really big ways, right? From protecting the teachings, to handling disagreements, to spreading the message globally.
Yeah, and as we get to these later councils, we see how important it was to keep understanding and preserving the Buddha's message, even centuries later. It really shows how powerful these ideas are.
Exactly. So the first four councils we talked about were huge game changers.
Yeah.
But our source highlights two more that are super interesting, especially for those who follow the Theravada tradition.
You got it. These later councils might not have the same drama as the earlier ones, but they tell us a lot about how Buddhist communities kept engaging with the teachings and making them relevant in new situations.
Okay, so first up, we're fast-forwarding to 1871 in Mandalay, Burma. The Fifth Buddhist Council happens under King Mindon, and it has a very specific focus.
Think of it like a massive project to preserve the Pali Canon. You know, the collection of Buddhist scriptures in the Pali language. For Theravada Buddhists, this is like the source for understanding the Buddhist teachings.
So it's like this huge scholarly effort to make sure these sacred texts are accurate and pure. Imagine rows of monks with all these old manuscripts, carefully comparing and debating every single word.
Exactly. And what came out of this council is really impressive. They inscribed the entire Pali Canon on 729 marble slabs, and they put them in this amazing temple complex. Talk about dedication.
Wow, that's like creating a permanent library of Buddhist wisdom. It shows how important it was to them to save these teachings for future generations.
Absolutely. It shows how much respect and commitment there was within the Burmese Buddhist community. And for anyone interested in like textual scholarship or how religious ideas are passed down, this Fifth Council is a really cool case study.
Okay, now let's jump to 1954. Burma had become independent and was rediscovering its Buddhist heritage. This is where the Sixth Buddhist Council comes in, and it becomes much more international.
You could say it was like a global meeting of Theravada Buddhist scholars and monks. They all came together to celebrate the 2500th anniversary of the Buddha's death. It was a huge event.
So it's not just, so even centuries after the first councils, we see this dedication to keeping the Buddha's words pure and authentic. It's really amazing.
It is. This Sixth Council was held at a special place called the Kabaya Pagoda, and they came up with a revised and standardized version of the Pali Canon. It shows how much the global Theravada community wanted to work together and keep the teachings alive.
So even though these later councils might not be as dramatic as the early ones, they still show how important it is to preserve the Dhamma, to adapt to changing times, and to create unity in the Buddhist world.
Yeah, they remind us that Buddhism isn't just something stuck in the past. It's a living tradition, always evolving and interacting with the world, but it's still rooted in those core values: compassion, wisdom, and liberation.
Well said. So as we finish up this journey through Buddhist councils, I have to ask, what's the biggest takeaway for our listeners? Especially those new UPSC folks who want to ace their GS1 exam?
Well, remember that these councils weren't just random events. They were really important moments in how Indian thought culture and society developed. Understanding what they meant and how they were different is really important for getting the complexity of ancient India and its lasting legacy.
So it's not just about remembering dates and names. It's about understanding how these meetings changed Buddhist history, how they affected Indian society, and how they contributed to one of the world's biggest religions.
Exactly. And even beyond the UPSC exam, exploring these councils gives you a glimpse into how ideas change, how much effort going into preserving wisdom, and how powerful a message can be. A message that still resonates with millions of people around the world.
I like that. So keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep uncovering those layers of Buddhist history. There's a whole world of wisdom out there just waiting to be discovered.
And that's a wrap for our deep dive into Buddhist councils. Thanks for joining us on this awesome journey through time and thought.
Until next time, keep those minds curious and keep looking for those aha moments. We'll see you on our next deep dive into another amazing topic.